After Romeo dies, Friar Lawrence enters. He's got a lantern, a crow, and a spade. He is also going to try and dig up Juliet, open her tomb, and Friar Lawrence says, "Saint Francis be my speed, how oft tonight have my old feet stumbled at graves." So he's saying, like, how many times I'm going to have to be in the grave. And then he hears someone and says, "Who's there?" It's Balthasar saying, "Here's a friend that you know well." And he says, "Bless be upon you, bliss be upon you. Tell me, my good friend, why are you here? Why is there a torch in yon that vainly lends his light to Grubbs and Isla's skull?" So basically saying, like, why is there a light coming from the Capulet tomb? And Balthasar says, "You know what? My master, the one that you love, he is in there." And he says, "What do you mean? Who is it?" "Romeo." "How long hath he been in there?" "He has been in there for half an hour." Friar Lawrence says, "Kate, let's go into the tomb. Go with me to the vault." And Balthasar says, "I dare not, sir. My master knows not, but I am gone hence, and fearfully did menace me with death if I did stay to look on his intents." And he says, "I can't go in there. Romeo threatened to kill me if I stayed here and spied." And he's like, "Okay, whatever. Stay then. I'll go alone." He's like, "Fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear some ill, unthrifty thing." So basically saying, I fear something bad has happened. And then Balthasar says, "As I did sleep under this tree, I dreamt my master and another fought, and that my master slew him, that my master killed him." And Friar Lawrence, so he's like, "Oh crap, that is not great." Runs into the tomb and he says, "Romeo!" And he's like, "Wait a second, what blood is this which stains the stony entrance of the sepulchre?" And he says, "Oh no, like, what's going on? Why is everything bloody? Why are there gory sores to lie discolored by this place of peace?" And he looks inside the tomb and he says, "Romeo, O pale, who else? What, Paris too, and steeped in blood? Ah, what an unkind hour is guilty of this lamentable change." The lady stirs, so he's like, okay, Romeo's dead, Paris is dead, and Juliet wakes up. She says, "Oh, comfortable friar, where is my lord? I do remember where I should be. I remember that I'm supposed to be in Capulet's tomb, and I remember that Romeo should be here. So where is Romeo?" And then there is a noise outside the tomb, and Friar Lawrence says, "I hear some noise, lady, come from that nest of death, contagion, and unnatural sleep. A greater power than we can contradict hath thwarted our intent." So basically, like, we need to get out of here, come away. Fate has screwed us over, something that we can't control. Thy husband is thy bosom, there lies dead." So your husband's dead, Paris is dead too. "Come, I'll get you away, and I'll put you amongst the sisterhood of holy nuns." That doesn't sound like a great solution. Stay not to question, for the watch is coming. "Come, go, good Juliet, I dare no stay longer." And Juliet says, "No, I'm not going. Go get thee hence, for I will not away." So Friar Lawrence leaves, and then Juliet takes in the scene, sees that Romeo has killed himself. "What's here? A cup closed in my true love's hand. Poison, I see, hath been his timeless end. Oh, troll drunk all, and left no friendly drop to help me after." So she's saying, like, oh man, like, how rude, he drank all the poison, there's none for me. "I will kiss thy lips, haply some poison yet deign upon them." So she's saying, hopefully there's poison on his lips. She kisses them, and she's like, "Oh, your lips are warm." The watchman and Paris's page enter. They say, "Lead, boy, which way?" So they're getting close to the entrance of the tomb. Obviously, there was no poison on Romeo's lips to help kill Juliet. So she says, "Noise? Then I'll be brief. Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath. There rust and let me die." So like Juliet has been saying the whole play, she stabs herself and dies. So now Juliet is dead as well. Paris's page enters the place and says, "This is the place there where the torch doth burn. The ground is bloody. Search about the churchyard. Go, some of you, whoever you find attached." So he's like, "Let's go get more men." And he says, "Pitiful sight, here lies the County Paris slain, and Juliet bleeding, warm and newly dead." He's like, okay, well, like, she was buried 2 days ago, but she's now warm and now she's bleeding. Like, what the hell is going on? And then he says, "Go tell the prince, run to the Capulets, raise up the Montagues, some other search." So more watchmen exit, and he continues to talk and says, "We see the ground whereon those woes do lie, but the true ground of all those piteous woes we cannot without circumstance descry." So basically, like, we still don't have the full story of what happened. So the second watchman with Romeo's man Balthasar enters. He says, "Here's Romeo's man. We found him in the churchyard. Hold him in safety, hold him in custody until the prince gets here." Then the third watchman enters with Friar Lawrence. Here is a friar that trembles, sighs, and cries. We took this mattock and the spade from him, so we took this pickaxe and shovel as he was coming from the churchyard side. And he's like, that's also suspicious. Put the friar in custody too. And then finally the prince enters and says, what misadventure is so early up that calls our person from our morning rest? So it's now early in the morning. Capulet and Lady Capulet enter. He says, what should it be that shrieks so abroad? It's like everybody's like crying, like screaming, like what's going out, or like what's going on. And then Lady Capulet says, people on the street are crying Romeo, some are crying Juliet, and some are calling Paris, and they're all running around and they're trying to get to the tomb, this Capulet monument. And Prince says, what fear is this which startles in our ears? So he's like, what's going on? Like the prince doesn't know what's going on either. And he says, sovereign prince, here lies Paris dead, Romeo's dead, Juliet dead, and now she's also dead again. And he's like, okay, look for what's going on, investigate, search, seek, and know how this foul murder comes. And he says, here is Friar Lawrence, here is Balthasar, and they both have instruments upon them fit to open these dead men's tombs. And Capulet says, O heavens, O wife, look how our daughter bleeds. This dagger hath mistaken for this being her house. So like he's saying, the knife doesn't belong in her stomach, it belongs in a sheath. It belongs actually in Romeo's sheath, and it's in her chest. Lady Capulet says, oh me, the sight of death is his bell that warns my old age. So basically saying, I feel like I'm going to die as well soon. Lord Montague enters as well, and he says, Prince says, come Montague, for thou art early up to see thy son, and ere now early down, basically saying you are up early to see that your son has died young. Montague says, alas, my liege, my wife is dead tonight. So Lady Montague has also died. Grief of my son's exile hath stopped her breath, so she died because she was so distraught that Romeo was exiled. What further woe conspires against mine age? So it's like, how much more pain can I endure? And he says, look in what season. And he looks at Romeo. He says, oh, thou untaught, what manners is in this to press before thy father to a grave? And he says, how dare you die before I? The prince says, seal up the mouth of this outrage for a while. So like, we're going to close down this tomb. We're going to shut everything down until we can clear up these ambiguities and know there spring their head their true descent. And then will I be general of your woes and lead you even to death. So he says, you know what? Let's figure this out. If death is what comes to you, I will be the one to bring you guys death, but let me figure out what's going. He says, meantime forbear, and let mischance to be slave to patience, bring forth the parties of suspicion. I'm going to question now Friar Lawrence of Balthasar to see what happens. Friar Lawrence says, I am the greatest able to do the least, so I know the most, but I wasn't able to help anyone. I am the most suspected at the time and place, so I was here when everything went down. And here I stand both to impeach and purge, myself condemned and myself excused. So he's like, I'm ready for whatever punishment you give me. And then he's like, okay, tell me what happens. And Friar Lawrence, he goes and he spills the guts on everything. I will be brief, for my short date of breath is not so long as it is a tedious tale. So he's like, I'm not going to live that long enough to tell the whole story, so he's going to be short. He says, Romeo is dead. He was married to Juliet. Juliet's dead. She was also Romeo's faithful wife. I married them myself on the same day that Tybalt died, whose untimely death banished the new male bridegroom from the city. And he says it was actually Romeo that Juliet was crying for, not Tybalt's death. And then, because she was betrothed to Paris, she came to me, and with wild looks bid me devise some mean to rid her from her second marriage, or in my cell there she would kill herself. So basically he's like, she came to me, she's like, I'm going to kill myself if you don't help me. He said, I gave to her, so tutored by my art, a sleeping potion. So he says, I set this all up. I faked Juliet's death. I helped her do it. Then I wrote to Romeo that he should come tonight and this dire night to help take her from her borrowed grave, being the time the potion's force should cease. So like, the potion is going to wear off tonight, so Romeo needs to be here. However, Friar John, who was supposed to take my letter, by accident and yesternight returned my letter back, so the message didn't go. I came here on the prefixed hour of her waking to help her out of her grave till I conveniently could send to Romeo. So I was going to keep her safe until Romeo could get here, but I came here a little bit too late, and the noble Paris and Romeo were already dead. She wakes, and I entreated her to come forth and bear this work of heaven with patience. So I was like, let's figure this out. Please be patient. But she was too desperate and would not come with me. And it seems she did violence on herself. This I know, and to the marriage her nurse is privy. So I said, this is all I know. If you need someone to confirm that she was actually married, the nurse knows. If aught in this miscarried by my fault, let my old life be sacrificed. So you know what? If you find this to be my fault, I will happily die. I will happily take the punishment. And he's like, okay, look, I know you're telling the truth. You're a holy man. And he's like, where's Balthasar? Balthasar comes and he says, you know what? I confirmed that Juliet had died to him. And then he rode straight from his post in Mantua and came right here. He gives the letter that he was meant for Romeo's father to the prince. And he says, this is what Romeo wanted me to give. He reads the letter. And he's like, okay, like, who raised the watch? Who came and got us? And then the page says, he came with flowers to strew his lady's grave. So he's talking about Paris. And he made me watch and stand guard. And then I whistled as Romeo came. The prince, he reads the letter, and he says, this letter doth make good thy friar words, their course of love. Basically saying everything that was said was true. And he's like, okay, Capulet Montague, you see what scourge is laid upon your waist, that heaven find means to kill your joys with love. So he says, you see what happens when you feud? Everybody is punished. I have lost family myself. We are all now suffering the consequences. Capulet says, oh, brother Montague, give me thy hand. This is my daughter's jointure, for no more I can demand. So basically, he says the feud is over. And Montague says, you know what, I'm going to raise a Juliet statue in pure gold, and then everybody in Verona will know her by her name. And then Capulet's like, I will also raise a golden statue called Romeo to lay beside her forever, to stand beside her forever. And then the prince gets the last words of the play, saying, a glooming peace for this morning, which it brings the sun for sorrow, which will not show his head. It's even though it's morning now, the sun's not rising, because the sun itself is too sad to rise. He says, go hence to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned, and some will be punished. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. And that ends, tragically, Romeo and Juliet.